Most people hear the name Bermuda and immediately picture the infamous Bermuda Triangle, a place where massive ships supposedly vanish without a trace. Others imagine an overcrowded tropical island somewhere in the Caribbean, packed with tourists and sweltering under relentless heat. But almost everything you think you know about Bermuda is wrong. What would you say about a country that completely bans tourists from driving cars, simply to protect its peace and quiet? On today's journey, you'll sink your bare feet into an endless stretch of sparkling pink sand, and descend beneath the Atlantic to explore the greatest shipwreck graveyard in the Western Hemisphere, and step into crystal caves whose waters have remained undisturbed for more than 30 million years. So settle in and prepare for the journey ahead, because by the time it ends, you'll discover that Bermuda isn't famous because of the Bermuda Triangle. It's remembered for something far more remarkable: the way a tiny island surrounded by endless ocean created a way of life and an identity that nowhere else on Earth has ever been able to replicate. Bermuda sits alone in the North Atlantic, more than 1,000 kilometers off the coast of North Carolina. No island chain surrounds it. No neighboring landmass offers context. It is a single comma-shaped strip of limestone, just 54 square kilometers, roughly the size of Manhattan, floating in the middle of open ocean with nothing around it for hundreds of miles in every direction. And yet it doesn't feel remote. It feels deliberate. The reason for that is the Gulf Stream, the great river of warm water that flows up the eastern coast of North America and wraps itself around Bermuda like a thermal embrace, creating a subtropical microclimate that has no business existing at this latitude. The winters here are mild. The summers are warm without being punishing. For a rock sitting alone in the North Atlantic, Bermuda is shockingly, almost suspiciously comfortable. But here is the detail that quietly reframes everything else you are about to see. Bermuda has no rivers, no natural lakes. Not a single freshwater stream crosses its limestone hills. Every drop of drinking water on this island falls from the sky, is caught on the white stepped rooftops that you'll see on every home, and flows down into underground cisterns built beneath each house. The architecture of Bermuda is literally designed around the act of catching rain. The entire civilization runs on what falls from the clouds. That one fact, easy to miss if nobody points it out, tells you more about how people learn to live here than almost anything else. The island's history begins not with intention, but with catastrophe. In 1609, a British ship called the Sea Venture was caught in a hurricane mid-Atlantic and wrecked on the reefs surrounding Bermuda. The survivors built two smaller ships from the island's cedar trees, eventually sailing on to Virginia, but the world they left behind had been permanently changed. Word spread of a temperate, fertile island sitting alone in the Atlantic, and settlers arrived to claim it. Bermuda became the oldest British overseas territory still in existence, a title it holds more than 400 years later. Over those 4 centuries, British settlers mixed with Portuguese laborers, with African communities who arrived under the most brutal of circumstances, and with the particular psychology that develops in a place this isolated, this small, this entirely dependent on its own ingenuity. Today's 64,000 Bermudians carry all of that history in the same breath, moving through their days at a pace they refer to, without irony, as Bermuda time. Not slow exactly, just unrushed. There is a difference, and you feel it within hours of arriving. That unhurried quality is not accidental, and it is not a marketing invention. It is the product of 4 centuries of people learning what actually matters when you live on 54 square kilometers of rock surrounded by ocean. Which makes what they built here and what you are about to walk into all the more remarkable. Knowing where Bermuda came from makes the first thing you actually see on the ground feel almost impossible to reconcile with reality. You step off the bus on the south shore, walk through a gap in the limestone cliffs, and stop. The sand in front of you is pink, not slightly pinkish in a certain light, not the kind of color you talk yourself into believing. The sand at Horseshoe Bay Beach is genuinely, unmistakably, luminously pink, and it curves in a perfect horseshoe arc between 2 walls of pale white rock, while the water beyond it moves through every shade of turquoise you have ever seen on a screen, but never quite believed existed in nature. The color comes from a microscopic organism called foraminifera, a single-celled creature that builds a bright red shell around itself, lives in the reef just offshore, dies, gets broken apart by waves over millions of years, and washes up on shore, mixed into the white coral sand. The result is a beach that has no equivalent anywhere on Earth. But the surface of the water is only the beginning of the story. Because beneath those same blue-green waves, Bermuda holds one of the most extraordinary underwater environments on the planet. And it is there because of a geographic coincidence that has been killing ships for 400 years. The reefs that ring this island sit in shallow water, often just a few meters below the surface, invisible from above, and positioned directly in the path of the Atlantic's most traveled trade routes. More than 300 shipwrecks lie on the seafloor surrounding Bermuda, earning it a nickname nobody was competing for, the shipwreck capital of the world. A single dive here costs between $120 and $150, and what you get for that money is access to something no museum can replicate. When you descend to the Mary Celestia, a Confederate blockade runner that sank in 1864 during the American Civil War, you are not visiting a ruin. You are entering a time capsule. The hull rests at around 17 meters, and the wreck is so intact that in 2011, divers reached into the cargo hold and pulled out sealed bottles of perfume and wine that had been sitting there, untouched, for 150 years. You put your hand on barnacle-covered wood that was cut in the 1860s, and schools of reef fish part around you like curtains as you move through rooms that no living person has stood in since the ship went down. And yet the ocean is not the only thing in Bermuda hiding its age underground. You descend a narrow staircase cut into the limestone bedrock. The temperature drops immediately, and then the ceiling opens above you and you lose your sense of scale entirely. Crystal Caves is a cathedral of geology, stalactites that have been growing downward for 30 million years. each one formed by a single drop of mineral-rich water, falling in exactly the same spot, again and again, across a span of time so vast it stops meaning anything to the human brain. Beneath them lies a perfectly still lake, so transparent that visitors consistently misjudge its depth, expecting a few inches of water and finding 15 meters instead. You walk across a floating pontoon bridge suspended over that lake, and the word that keeps arriving is not beautiful exactly. It is ancient. You feel the age of the place in a way that is almost physical. What makes it stranger is how it was found. In 1907, two 14-year-old boys lost a cricket ball down a hole in the ground, decided to investigate, lowered themselves in on ropes, and discovered 30 million years of geological history waiting for them in the dark. The sense of scale it gives you is free. If Crystal Caves forces you inward, the island's coral reef system pulls you back out, and it deserves equal attention. Bermuda's Reef is the northernmost coral reef on Earth, a biological fact that should not be possible at this latitude without the Gulf Stream, making it so. The result is roughly 500 square kilometers of living reef that wraps around the island, absorbs Atlantic swells before they reach shore, and sustains an underwater ecosystem that most tropical islands would envy. You can enter it without any scuba certification through helmet diving, an experience in which a heavy brass and glass helmet keeps your head completely dry while you walk along the seafloor at 3 meters depth. For between $100 and $130 over 3 hours, you feed parrotfish out of your hand. Stand next to brain corals the size of dining tables, and exist briefly inside an ecosystem that has been filtering Atlantic water for thousands of years. It is completely safe. It feels like nothing you have done before. The natural world of Bermuda is enough to justify the trip on its own. But no island is only its landscape, and what makes Bermuda genuinely singular is what 4 centuries of isolation, ingenuity, and layered cultures built on top of the geography. Start with what you will see on every professional on the street: the Bermuda short. And before you assume this is a beach garment, a vacation accessory, something people pack alongside their sunscreen, understand that in Bermuda, that assumption will mark you immediately as someone who has never been here. The Bermuda short is office attire. It is worn to client meetings, to formal lunches, to board presentations. The rules governing it are precise and non-negotiable. The hem must fall exactly 1 inch above the knee. The fabric must be proper suiting material, and the shorts must be paired with a dress shirt, a tie, a blazer, and knee-length socks. Remove any single element of that combination, and you are no longer wearing Bermuda shorts in any meaningful cultural sense. The origin is practical and slightly absurd. During the First World War, British soldiers stationed in Bermuda found the heat in full-length military trousers simply unbearable and cut them off at the knee. Local businessmen, watching this happen, decided the idea had merit but required dignity. They dressed it up. What began as an improvised military comfort measure became a national symbol of something very specifically Bermudian: the conviction that formality and common sense are not opposites, that you can be both rigorous and relaxed, that the standards you keep and the climate you live in are both real and both worth respecting. That same instinct for adaptation runs through the island's musical identity, though its origins are far darker. The rhythmic core of traditional Bermudian music is percussion. Snare drums driving tight, fast patterns, fifes cutting high over the top, and most distinctively, the sound of a coin struck against the rim of an empty glass bottle. That last element is not decorative. It is historical. Enslaved people in Bermuda were prohibited from owning musical instruments. They used what they had: bottles, spoons, anything that could hold a rhythm, and from that enforced resourcefulness came a percussive language that remains central to the island's music today. When you hear it live, which you will if you spend any real time here, you are hearing something that survived conditions specifically designed to silence it. And then there is the food, which manages to be simultaneously unpretentious and completely unexpected. The fish sandwich is Bermuda's defining street food, and it earns that title not through complexity, but through one genuinely baffling decision that turns out to be a masterstroke. A fresh fillet of snapper or wahoo is fried in a light batter, placed on top of coleslaw, tartar sauce, and hot sauce, and then closed between two slices of toasted raisin bread. The sweetness of the raisin bread against the salt and heat of the fish should not work. It absolutely works in a way that is immediately obvious and surprisingly difficult to stop thinking about afterward. A sandwich runs you between $15 and $20 on the street. The cassava pie, by contrast, carries the weight of something that was never just food. It is a dense bake of grated cassava, butter, eggs, and either chicken or pork, and it was historically made only at Christmas, a dish that marked something, that meant something. The African and European culinary traditions that produced it arrived in Bermuda separately and under very different circumstances. The pie holds both of them together, which is, in a small way, the story of the island itself. Then there is the cocktail that Bermuda has legally trademarked. Dark and Stormy is 2 ingredients: Gosling's Black Seal rum poured slowly over Barrett's ginger beer, so it rests on top in a dark, visible layer. The name came from a sailor looking at the glass and saying it looked exactly like the sky before a storm. Gosling's has since trademarked the specific combination, meaning that making this cocktail with any other rum means you are technically making something else. It is possibly the only drink in the world with a legally protected identity. What holds all of these cultural specifics together is a social expectation so consistent that it functions almost like infrastructure. In Bermuda, you do not walk past any someone, without saying good morning or good afternoon. Not on the street, not on the bus, not in a shop, not passing a stranger on a path through the park. You say it to the bus driver when you board. You say it to the cashier before you ask for anything. The greeting is not optional, and its absence is noticed and remembered. It is not performed friendliness. It is a deeply held social contract. Before any transaction, any request, any exchange, you acknowledge the other person as a person first. You will learn this within your first 12 hours here, and you will find yourself doing it automatically long after you leave. A culture's values show up in its everyday courtesies, but its deepest character reveals itself in what it chooses to celebrate, and in Bermuda, the calendar makes the priorities unmistakable. Every August, the island stops. Not metaphorically. Shops close. Financial offices go dark. Entire neighborhoods empty out and reconverge at the cricket ground for Cup Match, a 2-day tournament between the island's 2 historic cricket clubs. Somerset in red and blue, St. George's in light and dark blue. On the surface, it is a sporting event. Underneath it is the most important 2 days of the Bermudian year. Cup Match began in the late 19th century as a way for Black Bermudians to mark Emancipation Day, the anniversary of the abolition of slavery on the island. The cricket was the vehicle. The gathering was the point. Over time, it absorbed a second public holiday, celebrating the founding voyage of the Sea Venture, and became a single 2-day festival that the entire island attends together across every line of history, class, and background. For these 2 days, and only these 2 days, the government permits public gambling. A traditional dice game called Crown and Anchor, played on a simple board marked with a crown, an anchor, and 4 card suit symbols, is set up across the entire festival grounds. The dice roll, money moves, and the atmosphere, already electric from decades of sporting rivalry, tips into something much closer to a carnival. Is there anywhere else on Earth where the national holiday includes government-sanctioned gambling and also happens to be the anniversary of emancipation? The contrast is not accidental. It is Bermuda being exactly itself. The island's other defining ritual arrives on Good Friday, when Bermudians take to every available hilltop and fly kites. But not just any kites. Bermudian kites are hexagonal, framed in cedar, covered in brightly colored paper, and fitted with a thin strip of material called a buzzer that vibrates in the wind and produces a continuous, loud hum, audible from a significant distance. The sky above the island on Good Friday afternoon is filled with these sounds, dozens of them layering over each other from different elevations. The tradition traces back to a story about a British schoolteacher who used a cross-shaped kite to explain Christ's ascension to his Bermudian students. The religious origin has faded for most people now. What remains is the ritual itself, the making of the kite with your family in the days before, the cedar smell of the frame while you build it, and the collective agreement that this particular Friday belongs to the sky. Scattered across the island, in private gardens and hotel grounds and public parks, you will also find moon gates, freestanding circular arches of limestone, just wide enough for 2 people to walk through side by side. They were brought to Bermuda in the 19th century by a sea captain who encountered them in China, where the circular doorway represents wholeness and good fortune. In Bermuda, they took on a specific meaning. Newly married couples pass through them together on their wedding day. Couples who want to secure a long and happy relationship do the same. The stones are worn smooth at the center from centuries of hands brushing past them on the way through. It is a small gesture, a few seconds of intention, and it has outlasted the sea captain who brought the idea here by more than 100 years. And then there is the name Bermudians call themselves, which might be the most quietly revealing thing about the island. They call themselves onions. In the 19th century, Bermuda's most valuable export was a particular variety of sweet onion, mild and crisp, that was shipped to New York in such volume and at such price that it defined the island's economy for generations. The farms are mostly gone now, replaced entirely by the financial industry. But the nickname remained, not as nostalgia, but as a statement of identity. The onion grows in shallow, rocky soil. It does not require ideal conditions. It is sweet when it should, by rights be harsh. Bermudians kept that name because it describes something they recognize in themselves, the capacity to take root in unlikely ground and produce something worth sharing. There is always a distance between a place's cultural identity and the daily texture of actually living there. In Bermuda, that distance is unusually small. The capital, Hamilton, is a genuinely modern city in miniature. Glass office towers house the headquarters of some of the world's largest reinsurance companies. Super yachts sit in the harbor. The lunch crowd at waterfront restaurants is full of people in blazers and Bermuda shorts who are, between bites, managing risk portfolios worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Hamilton operates at a financial scale that would feel at home in London or Zurich, compressed into a city center you can walk across in 15 minutes. 15 minutes east. In the original settlement of St. George's, you cross into a different century entirely. His streets are too narrow for cars. The buildings are painted in faded pastels and have not changed their essential character since the 1600s. A man called the town crier, in full period costume, reads the morning news aloud in the town square every morning, a tradition that has continued in one form or another for over 400 years. How does an island this size hold two worlds this different without one of them swallowing the other? It does it by treating both as equally real, equally worth preserving. The economy that makes all of this possible is almost entirely invisible to a first-time visitor. Reinsurance, the business of insuring insurance companies, accounts for the vast majority of Bermuda's GDP, and the tax and regulatory environment that attracted those companies here has made this 54-square-kilometer island one of the wealthiest places on Earth per capita. The consequence is a cost of living that is genuinely startling, even for visitors from expensive cities. A modest guest house starts at $200 to $350 a night. A sit-down dinner at a mid-range restaurant runs $60 to $100 per person before drinks. A bag of groceries costs roughly 3 times what you would pay in the United States because almost everything arrives by ship. And yet none of that financial pressure translates into the pace of daily life, which is something you notice immediately and cannot quite explain to people who have not been here. The speed limit on Bermuda's roads is 35 kilometers per hour, and it is observed. Nobody honks. Multi-generational families share large properties, not out of necessity, but out of preference. 3 and 4 generations living in close proximity, because that is how they have always done it, and they see no reason to change. Sunday breakfast in a traditional Bermudian household is salt cod and potatoes, a meal unchanged for centuries. The money is there. The urgency is absent. Bermudians seem to have reached a collective, unspoken agreement that the point of prosperity is not to accelerate your life, but to build one worth slowing down inside. And then there are things that exist here, specifically and only here, that do not fit neatly into any of the categories above. The Bermuda cedar tree shaped the entire early history of this island. It covered the land when the first settlers arrived, provided the wood for the fastest sailing vessels of the 18th century, and gave Bermudian shipbuilders a reputation that traveled across the Atlantic. Then, in the 1940s, a species of scale insect arrived on the island and destroyed 95% of the cedar population in under a decade. Forests that had stood for longer than human memory on this island were gone within a single generation. What cedar remains today is protected at the level of a national monument. Cutting a living cedar tree in Bermuda is a criminal offense. The surviving trees are old and slow-growing and irreplaceable, and the way people talk about them here, carefully, with a specific kind of protectiveness, tells you something about what it means to have nearly lost the thing that built your world. On a lighter note, Bermuda has 7 championship golf courses on a 54-square-kilometer island, making it the highest density of golf courses per square kilometer anywhere on Earth. The courses are genuinely beautiful, running along cliff tops and shorelines, where the ocean fills the rough on multiple sides simultaneously. Whether 7 golf courses on an island this size represents inspired thinking or a certain kind of excess is a question you can decide for yourself while playing the 4th hole of one of them with the Atlantic crashing 40 feet below you. And then, hidden from the main tourist circuits, there is a place called Walsingham Nature Reserve, known locally as Tom Moore's Jungle, named for the Irish poet Thomas Moore, who visited briefly in 1804 and wrote about a calabash tree there with enough feeling that the name outlasted him by 2 centuries. Inside the reserve, among dense subtropical foliage and ancient limestone formations, you find the blue holes, openings in the rock where the water table is exposed, pools so deep and so clear they appear to glow from within. You can jump into them from the surrounding ledges. The water is cold in the way that very old water is cold, not uncomfortable but clarifying, the kind of temperature that makes you immediately aware that you are in contact with something the sun has not reached in a very long time. Most visitors to Bermuda never find this place. The ones who do tend not to leave quickly. If everything above has landed, here is what you actually need to know before you go. The best window is May through mid-October. Bermuda in winter is pleasant, but the water temperature drops enough to make the reef experiences significantly less appealing, and the clarity that makes the underwater world here so extraordinary improves considerably in warmer months. May and June are a particular sweet spot. The island's flowers are at their most vivid. The tourist numbers have not yet peaked, and the ocean is warm enough for everything described above. Citizens of the United States, the United Kingdom, Canada, and the European Union do not need a visa. You arrive, show your passport, and that is the end of the bureaucratic portion of your trip. Budget honestly and in advance. There is no budget accommodation tier in Bermuda. The most modest guest houses start around $200 to $350 per night. Mid-range and luxury resort properties run from $800 to over $1,500 per night in peak season. A fish sandwich from a street counter costs $15 to $20. A sit-down dinner runs $60 to $100 per person before drinks. The Bermudian dollar is pegged exactly 1-to-1 with the US dollar. American currency is accepted everywhere, and you do not need to exchange anything before you arrive. You cannot rent a car. This is not a technicality or a loophole. Tourists are legally prohibited from renting automobiles in Bermuda. The options are the public bus network, pink with blue stripes, reliable and punctual, at around $5 per ride, or a 2-seat electric vehicle called the Renault Twizy, available for around $120 per day, which handles the island's narrow, winding roads with surprising ease and gives you the freedom to stop wherever you want. 2 practical things will make a measurable difference. First, if you rent any motorized vehicle, wear a helmet. The roads are narrow, they curve constantly, and Bermuda drives on the left. Second, greet people. Every bus driver, every cashier, every person you pass on a path. Good morning, good afternoon. 2 words, 2 seconds, and in Bermuda it is not a nicety. It is the baseline social expectation between 2 people sharing the same island. A service charge of 15% to 17% is automatically added to all restaurant bills, so you do not need to tip additionally unless the service was genuinely exceptional. People around the world still hear the name Bermuda and think of vanished ships, mysterious disappearances, and the legend of a triangle hidden somewhere beneath the Atlantic. But after traveling across these islands, that story no longer feels like the real mystery. The greatest mystery of Bermuda was never why ships disappeared. It was how a tiny island, isolated in the middle of the ocean, created a way of life that so much of the modern world has quietly forgotten. Here, luxury is not measured by skyscrapers or endless speed, but by time. Time to greet a stranger, time to gather with family, time to protect traditions, time to let nature, rather than schedules, decide the rhythm of each day. Perhaps that is why Bermuda stays with you long after you leave. Not because of its pink beaches, its crystal caves, or even the hundreds of shipwrecks resting beneath the sea. Those are only the setting. What truly makes this place unforgettable is the people who transformed isolation into identity and a small collection of islands into something that exists nowhere else on Earth. So if this journey changed the way you see Bermuda, let us know what surprised you the most in the comments below. And if you're ready to discover another extraordinary corner of the world, join us again in the next documentary.